All right, whenever you're ready.
All right. So the claim I'm going to be refuting today is that addressing trans people and having gender identity disorder is inappropriate. One of the first claims that my opponent used to support this fact is that there's a difference between sex and gender. While this is true in whoa, okay, there's a bee in here, and I have a serious fear of bees. I'm sorry.
Well, if he comes near you, you let me know.
Okay.
I mean.
Turn off the light for a second.
Turn off the light.
Yeah, you should go toward the light.
Oh God! I'm just gonna open the door. Maybe that'll.
I'm kind of allergic to bees.
That's for the day.
Here we go.
doesn't have like machine guns.
I would actually.
Yes, that's drama.
So that's on my video now. That's gonna go on YouTube. Yay.
That's okay. Start over, that's fine.
Start over?
Yeah.
All right. So, like I said before, the claim I'm going to be repeating today is that addressing trans people and having transgender people as having gender identity disorder is inappropriate. And the first claim that my opponent used to support this fact is that there's a difference between sex and gender. And while this is true in contemporary society and for the average person, especially the average cisgender person, which he refers to a lot in here, gender and sex are the same thing, and while this may be untrue to most people, it's they use the words interchangeably. So when he uses it as a way to say that transsexual and transgender people, that they're not the same. That is common knowledge, while sex and gender being two different things isn't necessarily common knowledge. The second claim that my opponent uses is that gender identity disorder is a label created to understand transgendered people. And he supports this by saying that disorders are stigmatized and usually associated with the mentally ill or and people who are incapable of rational thinking. But that may be true, but that's not at fault of the phrase disorder. That's at the fault of society having a negative connotation with the term disorder. A disorder isn't necessarily a negative thing. It's just that society always thinks it's a negative thing. Okay. Sorry. Also, okay, my opponent says that gender identity disorder has very different treatments according to a family or doctor's religions, ideologies, and viewpoints. Again, the same can be said of any disorder. It's not specifically gender identity disorder that doctors treat differently based on their religion or their viewpoints. If a doctor has a specific religion or viewpoint, he treats almost every disorder in a different way or according to said religion or viewpoint or, yeah. All right. The third point that my opponent brings up is that creating a third gender or label produces an appropriate environment that is positive and encouraging. I researched this online and to see what some people said about this proposed third gender. And many people claim that a third gender is not enough. And this is a quote from Dr. name I cannot say out loud, Abjuli, who says a third gender would not eat this problem. There would need to be at least 6: male, female, male with a feminine identity, female with a masculine identity, male who identifies with neither masculine nor feminine, and female who identifies with neither masculine or feminine. So this this appears to be the most commonly advocated labeling process, so that there's a place for everyone to be within the sphere of labeling used. And yeah, that's it.
All right, well, you start off pretty well, twice. Identifying the subject that's being talked about and what the advocate's claim is. I think there needs to be a discussion about whether or not inappropriate is a value argument, and why there needs to be a label other than for sex, why gender matters as opposed to sex, that there is some significant justification or issue or need that exists for that particular label, because it sounds like what it's all coming down to is people who are in these situations or have this condition, let's not stigmatize them by saying this disorder, but are in this particular condition, apparently they feel that there is some harm that's created to them or there's some bias that's created to them because of the labeling that's gone on. So the first question is, where is the bias? What is the harm that occurs? What negative consequence is resulting from this? And I don't know that the advocate presented an explanation about what those things were, and I know that you don't present any explanation about why it would be unimportant. Mostly it sounds like you're kind of summarizing that people see it as being stigmatized because it's called a disorder. Well, okay, if the term disorder is problematic, there might be other ways of identifying it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it would fix the problem, like you said, if you put it on a form. You know, when people are filling out a form and they're asked to identify their sex instead of their gender, I guess it would be, and we had those 6 categories, how often would that ever get used? I think one of the things you might want to point out is that this is a relatively narrow group of people, that they do have a special interest involved, that you don't think that they're being harmed in any way by this, and if they are being harmed, it's mostly because of the issues that they face rather than the way society treats them as a consequence of this. And I don't really get a sense that you've got a grasp of what the issue is on this point, because it really sounds like you just kind of summarize ideas that the advocate presents and then summarize another idea that is kind of tangentially related, but you don't make any inferences on those points. And as a result, I'm not seeing much clash here. At the end, there's a little bit of an argument when you say, well, you know, a third gender label would be, you know, wouldn't be enough. Well, I think that there's a potential argument here to say the idea that this would fix the problem is false, because we have so many other options. The truth is that people would still be discriminated against or identified differently, because 99% of the population is going to be checking male or female as opposed to male with female identity issues or female with male identity issues or whatever the other 3 choices were in each of those categories. I think there are ways to make this argument that just suggest this is a very narrow issue. It's kind of theoretical in nature. There's not much documentation on what the consequences to any of these people are, except the self-imposed consequences that come with their identity issue. Yeah, you know, and maybe we should just call it an identity issue. But when people are filling out, you know, maybe we should stop having people fill out forms. Would that fix a problem? That might be an interesting way of doing it too. You know, why do we have that information in the first place? If it's not relevant, we could take it out. Where is it relevant? That would have been another place to maybe develop some argument. When would it be relevant? There might be some issues there. All right, thank you.